I found out at the dinner table. My brother wouldn't meet my eyes. My wife kept her hand on her stomach. My mother reached for the salt. No one explained anything. The ceiling fan clicked overhead. Plates scraped. Someone coughed. My father cleared his throat and said we should be happy for them. He said people make mistakes. He said family moves on. I said nothing. I tasted metal. That was the moment I understood something simple. I wasn't losing a marriage. I was being quietly erased. And they were already practicing living without me, like I had already gone. I asked for help once. Just once. Not money. Not favors. I asked for honesty. It was after the dinner. After the plates were cleared and my wife stayed seated, hands still on her stomach like it belonged there now. I followed my parents into the living room. The couch sagged in the middle. The lamp buzzed faintly. I asked my mother what was going on. I asked my father why no one said anything. I said I needed the truth because I was still married and no one had warned me. My father sighed like I was being difficult. He said things had happened quickly. He said emotions were high. He said my brother and my wife had found comfort in each other during a hard time. He said it wasn't ideal, but it was done now. My mother nodded, eyes fixed on the carpet. I asked if anyone had thought to tell me before it became permanent. That's when the tone changed. My father said I needed to be practical. He said my brother was finally happy. He said my wife was pregnant and stress wasn't good for the baby. He said dragging this out would only hurt people. He said sometimes adults have to let things go for the greater good. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The room leaned toward him automatically. I asked what I was supposed to do. He said I was strong. He said I'd always been the responsible one. He said I would land on my feet. He said my brother needed support right now and it wouldn't look good if there was conflict. He said family reputation mattered. He said we would talk about logistics later, like housing and holidays. My mother finally looked up and said she hoped I wouldn't make this ugly. No one asked how I was sleeping. No one asked where I was going to live. No one asked what it felt like to watch my marriage end in front of me. This wasn't new. It just hurt differently. When we were younger, my brother wrecked my car and my parents helped him replace it. When I needed a loan for school, I was told to budget better. When he lost a job, my father called in favors. When I wanted time off for surgery, I was told the company needed me. When my brother needed space to find himself, I hosted holidays alone. It was always explained as timing, as need, as circumstance. I remembered standing in this same room years earlier, asking if I could move back home temporarily after a breakup. My father had said it wouldn't be good for appearances. My brother moved in 6 months later after quitting his job. No explanation required. Sitting there now, I felt something pull away inside me. Not anger. Not sadness. Just a clean distance. I realized I was being managed, not supported. I wasn't a daughter in that room. I was a variable they wanted to minimize. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I said I needed time. My father nodded, already relieved. My mother hugged me lightly, like I was a guest. I left before dessert. In the driveway, I sat in my car and watched the house lights glow through the windows. I didn't feel the urge to go back inside. That night, I slept on the couch at a friend's place. I stared at the ceiling and replayed my father's words. He's happy now. Let it go. I understood then that there was nothing to fix. There was only something to step away from. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. After that night, everything softened in a way that felt rehearsed. My parents started calling less. When they did, it was careful. Short updates. Neutral tones. My brother never reached out directly. My wife sent one message saying she hoped I understood how complicated things were. I didn't reply. Silence did the work for me. I began to notice how often I had been edited out long before this. Old memories came back, uninvited. Family vacations where I took the photos but never appeared in them. Group chats where plans were made, then adjusted without me. Decisions that affected me but were explained after the fact. I had always told myself it was coincidence. That everyone was busy. That I was reading too much into it. I wasn't. A week later, I saw the announcement online. A carefully worded post about new beginnings. My brother's hand on my wife's shoulder. Comments filled with hearts and congratulations. My mother replied to each one. My father shared it. No one mentioned me. Not even indirectly. It was as if my role had been quietly deleted and the system refreshed without error. I kept living my life in small, practical ways. I changed passwords. I forwarded mail. I scheduled an appointment with a lawyer, not for drama, just for clarity. I asked about separation, assets, next steps. The lawyer listened, took notes, didn't flinch. That steadiness mattered more than sympathy. At work, people noticed something was off but didn't ask. I stopped filling the silence. I arrived, did my job, left on time. I ate lunch alone without pretending it was temporary. I realized how much energy I'd spent smoothing things over for other people. Without that job, my days felt strangely open. The shift wasn't loud. It didn't feel brave. It felt necessary. I stopped explaining myself to friends who asked gentle questions. I stopped defending my family when someone said that situation sounded wrong. I let the truth exist without polishing it. That was new for me. Uncomfortable at first. Then grounding. One night, months later, I reread the messages I'd saved. The ones where I was told to be understanding. To think of the baby. To not make things harder. I noticed how often my needs were mentioned as an inconvenience. How rarely they were acknowledged as real. That's when I decided I was done participating in a story that required my silence to work. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn anyone. I just stopped showing up in the ways they expected. And for the first time, the quiet felt like mine. They reached out when it became inconvenient not to. It started with a call from my mother. Her voice was softer than usual. Careful. She asked how I was doing, like we were catching up after a long trip. Then she mentioned paperwork. The house. How things were complicated now that my brother was starting a family. She said it would mean a lot if I could sign something to keep things simple. She said it wasn't really about me. It was about stability. I asked what I would be signing. There was a pause. Then she said we could talk about details later. She said I should trust them. She said this was just how families handle transitions. I said I wasn't comfortable doing anything without legal review. I kept my voice flat. I didn't explain why. The reaction came fast. My father called next. He said he was disappointed. He said I was being stubborn. He reminded me of everything they'd done for me growing up. He said this wasn't the time to be selfish. He said my brother had responsibilities now. He said I was creating problems where there didn't need to be any. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I said no. Just that. After that, the messages multiplied. Aunts, cousins, old family friends. Everyone suddenly concerned. Everyone urging me to reconsider. To be the bigger person. To think long-term. One message said I would regret burning bridges. Another said blood mattered more than feelings. I didn't reply to any of them. I sent one group text instead. Congratulations, you traded your daughter for a homewrecker. Then I blocked the thread. I didn't feel relief right away. I felt exposed, like I'd stepped outside without a coat. But nothing terrible happened. No collapse. No emergency. The world stayed intact. I went to work the next day. I answered emails. I ate lunch. The sky didn't fall because I refused to carry what wasn't mine. 2 weeks later, my lawyer forwarded me an email. My parents were asking for clarification. My brother wanted to discuss terms. They were confused about why communication had stopped. They wanted to resolve things amicably. The message ended with hope. I read it once and closed it. They weren't asking how I was. They were asking how to fix the inconvenience I'd caused by stepping out of line. That was all the clarity I needed. That was the last time I engaged directly. Everything else went through legal channels. Quietly. Properly. Without emotion. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. The boundary had already been set. After that, the noise faded. Not immediately. At first, there were attempts to reroute. Messages sent through friends. Questions disguised as concern. Someone asking if I'd be willing to talk, just briefly, to clear the air. I didn't respond. Weeks passed. The months. No one showed up at my door. No one asked what I needed. The urgency disappeared once they realized I wasn't coming back into position. I heard things indirectly. My brother struggled to keep up with expenses he hadn't planned for. The house my parents were so eager to protect became a point of tension instead of security. Legal costs mounted. Deadlines were missed. Paperwork dragged on longer than expected. Systems don't bend for family narratives. They only care about signatures, timelines, and balances due. My lawyer handled everything. Calm emails. Clear boundaries. No drama. I never spoke to my parents again. They tried once more, asking if I would reconsider communication if things stayed respectful. I declined through counsel. That door closed without a sound. There was a brief encounter months later. A mutual acquaintance ran into me in a parking lot and said my mother had asked about me. Said she worried I was holding on to anger. Said maybe time had softened things. I smiled politely and said I was doing well. That was true. I didn't pass along a message. My life didn't transform overnight. There was no sudden happiness. Just steadiness. I moved into a smaller place where nothing reminded me of who I used to be. I rebuilt routines. I learned which mornings were hardest and which evenings felt peaceful. I stopped waiting for apologies that were never coming. What surprised me most was how little space they occupied once I stopped feeding the connection. Without the constant pull, their absence felt natural. Like something that had been overdue. I didn't miss the version of myself that kept making room for everyone else. Sometimes I think about that group text. Not with pride. With clarity. It wasn't meant to wound. It was meant to end something that had been quietly draining me for years. And it worked. I didn't get revenge. I got distance. I got quiet. I got my name back without needing to explain it to anyone. They're still trying to solve the mess they created. I'm not part of that equation anymore. And that, more than anything, is what finally feels like peace.